The unexpected arrival. The message arrived at Earth's United Defense Command on a quiet Tuesday morning, transmitted through quantum channels that humanity had only recently learned to decrypt. Admiral Marcus Steele sat in his office overlooking the sprawling orbital shipyards of Luna Station, reading the alien communication for the 5th time. The translation software had worked flawlessly, but the content still seemed surreal. The Galactic Federation was inviting humanity to make first contact. After decades of knowing they were being watched, studied from afar by advanced civilizations, the moment had finally arrived. The formal invitation was written in perfect English, clearly the work of sophisticated translation algorithms that had been analyzing human communications for years. "Admiral," came the voice of his aide through the intercom. "Captain Rodriguez is here for the briefing." "Send her in," Steele replied, setting down the data tablet containing the alien message. "Captain Elena." Rodriguez entered the office with her characteristic purposeful stride. At 35, she was one of the youngest ship commanders in the Earth Defense Fleet, having earned her position through exceptional tactical brilliance during the outer colony skirmishes. Her dark eyes immediately focused on the tablet in Steele's hands. "Is that the alien communication, sir?" she asked, taking a seat across from his desk. "It is," Steele confirmed. "The Galactic Federation wants to meet with us. They've provided coordinates for a neutral diplomatic station called Nexus Prime, located about 40 light-years from Earth." Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. "When do they want this meeting?" "Within the next standard month," Steele replied. "But there's something in their message that bothers me. They specifically request that we send a single diplomatic shuttle, unarmed, with no more than 20 crew members." Rodriguez frowned. "A shuttle?" "Sir, with respect, it doesn't sound like humanity at all." Steele nodded grimly. "That's exactly what concerns me, Captain. They've been watching us for decades. They should know that we don't build unarmed vessels. The history behind that philosophy was written in blood and fire. 20 years ago, humanity had encountered its first hostile alien contact during what became known as the Great Silence War. Unknown, raiders had attacked the Mars mining colonies, killing thousands of civilians before Earth's scattered defense forces could respond. The lesson had been clear and brutal. In the vastness of space, every human vessel needed to be capable of defending itself. "What kind of ship are we actually sending, sir?" Rodriguez asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Steele stood and walked to the wide viewport that offered a view of the shipyards. Docked at the primary berth was the UES Thunderstrike, humanity's newest and most advanced battle cruiser. The vessel stretched nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with defensive arrays, kinetic weapons, and the latest in human military technology. "The Thunderstrike," Steele said simply. "And you're going to command her." Rodriguez's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, they asked for a shuttle. The Thunderstrike is our most powerful warship." "The Thunderstrike is also our most advanced vessel," Steele countered. "She has the best sensors, the most sophisticated communication arrays, and the most capable crew in the fleet. If we're going to represent humanity to the galaxy, we should send our best." "But won't the aliens see this as aggressive? Threatening?" Steele turned back to face his subordinate. "Captain, these beings have been studying us for decades. They know about our history, our conflicts, our nature. If they wanted to meet the real humanity, then they should meet the real humanity. We don't build civilian ships and military ships like other species apparently do. We build ships that can explore, trade, research, and defend themselves if necessary." Rodriguez considered this for a moment. "You're saying the Thunderstrike isn't just a warship?" "Exactly. She's a human ship. She represents everything we've learned about surviving in hostile space. Our engineering capabilities, our determination to protect what matters to us, and our refusal to be victims. Over the next 3 weeks, the Thunderstrike prepared for its historic mission. The ship's crew of 800 conducted endless drills and system checks. Engineers tested every component twice. The ship's quantum AI, designated Aria, ran thousands of simulations of the journey and potential first contact scenarios. Rodriguez stood on the bridge watching the final supply runs. Her executive officer, Commander James Park, approached with a status report. "All departments report ready, Captain," Park said. "Though I have to admit, I'm concerned about arriving at a diplomatic function in a battle cruiser." "Concerned how, Commander?" Rodriguez asked. Park gestured toward the tactical displays showing the ship's impressive weapon systems. "The aliens might interpret this as hostile. They specifically asked for an unarmed shuttle." Rodriguez walked to the main view screen, which currently showed Earth hanging in the distance like a blue marble. "Commander, humanity learned a hard lesson 20 years ago during the Great Silence. We discovered that in space, you're either predator or prey. We chose to be neither." "Meaning?" "We chose to be protectors," Rodriguez explained. "Every human vessel, from the smallest research craft to the largest colony ship, carries defensive weapons. Not because we're aggressive, but because we refuse to be helpless. The Thunderstrike represents that philosophy." Park nodded slowly. "When you put it that way, sending anything else would be dishonest." "Exactly. We're not trying to intimidate anyone. We're simply being ourselves." Meanwhile, 40 light years away, the diplomatic station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a crystalline flower. The massive structure had served as a neutral meeting ground for the Galactic Federation for over 1,000 years. Today, it would host its most unusual first contact ceremony in centuries. Ambassador Kethval of the Zephyrian Collective stood in the station's primary observation deck, his translucent blue skin shimmering with nervous energy. As the Federation's chief first contact specialist, he had overseen the integration of 17 species into galactic civilization. The process was always the same. A primitive species would arrive in a small, crude vessel, overwhelmed by the magnificence of advanced galactic technology. They would be welcomed, assessed, and assigned an appropriate junior position in the Federation hierarchy. "Any sign of the human vessel yet?" asked High Counselor Vextar, a towering insectoid being whose species had joined the Federation 3 centuries prior. "Our sensors detected their faster-than-light signature approximately 1 hour ago," Kethval replied. "They should emerge from hyperspace momentarily." Around them, representatives from dozens of species waited for the ceremony to begin. The arrival of a new species was always cause for celebration, though most attendees expected this to be a routine affair. The humans had been observed for decades. The reports described them as typical for an emerging species: violent history, recent planetary unification, basic space travel capabilities. Nothing particularly remarkable. "I remember our own arrival," Vextar commented, his mandibles clicking in what passed for nostalgia among his people. "We thought we were so advanced with our primitive fusion drives and kinetic weapons. Then we saw Federation technology and realized how much we had to learn." Kethval's chromatophores pulsed in agreement. "It's always the same pattern. Initial pride, then humility, then gradual integration into galactic society. The humans will follow the standard progression." A soft chime indicated an incoming sensor reading. The station's Kalani technician, a reptilian being with 4 arms and enhanced cognitive processing, raised one clawed hand. Ambassador Kethval. The human vessel is emerging from hyperspace now. "Shall I display it on the main viewer?" "Please do," Kethval replied. "Let's welcome our newest members to the galactic community." The main display screen activated, showing the star field near Nexus Prime. All eyes turned to watch the emergence of what everyone expected to be a small, crude shuttle carrying perhaps a dozen nervous humans. Space itself seemed to ripple as the human vessels. FTL drive created an exit portal. The first thing to emerge was the bow section, an angular wedge of dark metal that gleamed under the station's external lights. Then the rest of the ship appeared. The observation deck fell completely silent. The human vessel was enormous, stretching nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was covered in armor plating and bristled with weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and defensive systems. Massive engines glowed with barely contained power, enough to accelerate the giant ship to significant fractions of light speed. "By the seven suns," whispered Vextar, his compound eyes wide with shock. "That's not a shuttle." Kethval's skin had turned pale white, a sign of extreme stress among his species. "It's a battleship." "They sent us a battleship." The station's alert klaxons began blaring immediately. The tactical officer's voice echoed through the corridors, barely maintaining professional calm. "All stations, security alert. Unknown warship has entered the diplomatic zone. Classification: heavy battle cruiser. All defensive systems activating." Before anyone could respond, every communication channel on the station activated simultaneously. A human voice, calm and professional, spoke in perfect galactic standard. Asterisk. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the UES Thunderstrike, diplomatic vessel of the United Earth Defense Command. We have arrived at the coordinates specified in your invitation. Requesting permission to dock." Diplomatic vessel? The human captain had called that massive warship a diplomatic vessel. Kethval realized that every being on the observation deck was staring at him, waiting for his response. As the senior diplomatic officer, this situation was his responsibility. He struggled to compose himself, his chromatophores flickering between colors as his emotions shifted rapidly. "UE's Thunderstrike," he managed to say, his voice translator working overtime to convert his stress-altered speech patterns. "This is Ambassador Kethval of the Galactic Federation. We welcome you to Nexus Prime. However, there appears to be some confusion. We requested a diplomatic shuttle." There was a brief pause. When Captain Rodriguez responded, Kethval could hear genuine puzzlement in her voice. "Ambassador, the Thunderstrike is our diplomatic vessel. We received your invitation and responded as requested. Is there some problem with our arrival?" A problem? Kethval thought. They had brought a ship capable of destroying half the station and asked if there was a problem. High Counselor Vextar leaned close and whispered urgently, "What kind of species? Sends a warship to a peace conference?" Before Kethval could answer, the human captain's voice came through the communication system again. "Ambassador, if I may clarify, you asked Earth to send a representative vessel. The Thunderstrike represents humanity. We don't typically build unarmed vessels. All of our ships are capable of self-defense. That's standard doctrine for us." Standard doctrine. The humans considered it normal to arm every vessel in their fleet. Kethval made a quick decision. The situation had already moved far beyond standard protocols. The humans were here. Their ship could probably fight off the station's entire defense fleet if it chose to, and retreat was not an option. "Captain Rodriguez, you have permission to approach. Please proceed to docking bay 7. He chose the largest bay available, though even that would be a tight fit for the massive human vessel. "Thank you, Ambassador. The Thunderstrike will dock shortly. I look forward to meeting you in person." As the enormous human battleship began its approach to the station, moving with surprising grace for something so large, Kethval watched in fascination and growing dread. Every detail of the vessel spoke, of function over form, of practical engineering over artistic design. This was a ship built by beings who expected conflict and prepared for it. "What have we done?" Vextar asked quietly. Kethval didn't answer immediately. He was beginning to realize that humanity might not be a typical emerging species at all. The Federation had observed them for decades, analyzing their radio communications, studying their primitive space ventures, cataloging their violent history. The reports had concluded they were manageable, predictable, nothing special. Looking at the thunderstrike, Kethval understood that those reports had been catastrophically wrong. The humans weren't primitive. They were practical. They didn't separate their civilization into civilian and military components like most species did. They built everything to survive, to fight if necessary, to protect what they valued. They had just announced their arrival to the galaxy in the only way that made sense to them, with a warship that could protect itself and its crew no matter what they encountered. Contact the Federation Council immediately. Kethval ordered one of his assistants. Tell them we may have severely underestimated the humans. What should I tell them about the nature of our error? The assistant asked. Kethval watched as the thunderstrike settled into the docking bay, its massive bulk taking up nearly every centimeter of available space. The station itself seemed to sigh under the weight of the alien vessel. Tell them, he said slowly, that we invited what we thought was a lamb to join our flock. But what actually arrived was something else entirely. Something we've never encountered before. What's that, sir? Kethval's chromatophores pulsed with a mixture of fear and reluctant admiration as he stared at the human warship. A shepherd. The revelation of human nature, the docking process, took nearly 2 hours, far longer than anyone had expected. The UE's thunderstrike was simply too large for standard diplomatic protocols. Engineering teams had to reconfigure the entire docking bay, extending additional support structures and rerouting power conduits to accommodate the massive human vessel. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the thunderstrike's primary airlock, wearing her formal dress uniform. The deep blue fabric wore the insignia of the United Earth Defense Command, along with service ribbons that told the story of humanity's struggles among the stars. Behind her stood a diplomatic team of 12, including Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth's leading xenobiologist and cultural specialist. Remember, Rodriguez addressed her team, we're here as representatives of all humanity. These beings have been watching U.S. for decades, but they've never spoken with us directly. Everything we do and say will shape their understanding of our species. Dr. Chun, a slight woman with keen intelligence shining in her dark eyes, checked her translation device one final time. Captain, I've studied every bit of alien communication we've intercepted over the years. They seem to expect us to be subservient, grateful for their attention. Are we grateful? Rodriguez asked. We're curious, Chun replied. There's a difference. The airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor that was clearly not designed for beings of human stature. The ceiling was too high, the walls too wide, built to accommodate a variety of alien physiologies. The delegation from Nexus Prime stood waiting, a collection of beings that looked like they had stepped out of humanity's wildest science fiction dreams. Ambassador Kethval stepped forward, his translucent blue skin shifting through what Rodriguez recognized as nervous color patterns. Behind him stood High Counselor Vextar, whose insectoid features remained unreadable, and several other beings, representing different member species of the Galactic Federation. Captain Rodriguez, Kethval said, his voice carrying through a translation device that created perfect English. Welcome to Nexus Prime. I am Ambassador Kethval, and I will be your primary liaison with the Galactic Federation. Rodriguez stepped forward and extended her hand in the traditional human greeting. After a moment of confusion, Kethval cautiously reached out with his own appendage, mimicking the gesture. Ambassador, Rodriguez said, thank you for this invitation. Humanity has long wondered when we would make contact with our galactic neighbors. Yes, well, Kethval's chromatophores flickered rapidly. There is much to discuss. Perhaps we should proceed to the formal meeting chamber. Asterisk, as the group walked through the station's corridors, Rodriguez noticed how other beings stopped to stare at the human delegation. Some seemed curious, others appeared nervous, but all showed a level of interest that seemed unusual for what was supposed to be routine first contact. The formal meeting chamber was a vast amphitheater with seating arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, creating a kaleidoscope of colors, shapes, and sizes that boggled the human mind. High Counselor Vextar took his position at the central podium, his mandibles clicking as he spoke. We gather today to welcome humanity into the galactic community. This is a historic moment, as it always is when a new species takes its first steps into the larger universe. He paused, his compound eyes focusing on the human delegation. However, there are certain irregularities that must be addressed before we can proceed with the standard integration protocols. Captain Rodriguez stood, her bearing confident and professional. If I may, High Counselor, what irregularities are you referring to? A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Apparently, new species weren't expected to speak without permission. Vextar's antennae twitched with what might have been annoyance. The vessel you arrived in, Captain. We requested a diplomatic shuttle. Instead, you brought a warship. The Thunderstrike is our diplomatic vessel, Rodriguez replied calmly. She represents the best of human engineering and capabilities. But it's armed, interjected another representative, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes. New species traditionally arrive in unarmed craft to demonstrate peaceful intentions. Dr. Chun stepped forward slightly, and Rodriguez nodded for her to speak. If I may explain, Chun said, humanity doesn't traditionally separate our vessels into armed and unarmed categories. All of our ships are capable of self-defense. All of them? Kethval asked, his skin shifting to a pale green color. All of them, Rodriguez confirmed. From our largest exploration vessels to our smallest transport craft, every human ship carries defensive systems. A different voice spoke. From the assembled crowd, this one belonging to a tall reptilian being with scales that reflected the chamber's lighting. That suggests an extremely militaristic society. Most civilized species abandon such practices once they achieve planetary unity. Asterisk. Rodriguez felt a flash of anger at the implied criticism, but controlled it carefully. With respect, we learned the necessity of self-defense through hard experience. What kind of experience? Asked High Counselor Vextar. Rodriguez looked at Dr. Chun, who nodded encouragingly. The story needed to be told. 20 years ago, Rodriguez began, humanity encountered what we now call the Great Silence. Unknown raiders attacked our outer colonies, targeting civilian populations and infrastructure. They came without warning, struck without mercy, and disappeared before our defense forces could respond. The chamber fell quiet. Even the ambient sounds of the station's life support systems seemed to fade. The attacks continued for 18 months. Rodriguez continued. We lost over 50,000 civilians. Entire colonies wiped out while waiting for help that arrived too late. During that time, we learned a fundamental truth about survival in space. Which was? Kethval asked quietly, that in the vastness of the universe, you cannot rely on others to protect what you love. Every ship, every station, every outpost must be capable of defending itself, because help might not come in time. Dr. Chun stepped forward again. The Great Silence taught us that space is not safe simply because we wish it to be. The raiders were never identified, never caught, never brought to justice. They simply vanished back into the dark between stars. But they left us with a lesson we will never forget. And that lesson shaped how you build your ships? Asked the crystalline being. It shaped how we think about survival, Rodriguez replied. We don't build warships and civilian ships. We build human ships. Vessels that can explore, research, trade, colonize, and defend themselves when necessary. The Thunderstrike can map star systems, conduct scientific research, carry diplomatic delegations, and protect herself from hostile forces. She represents everything humanity has learned about existing in dangerous space. A new voice spoke from the upper levels of the amphitheater. The speaker was another insectoid, but larger and more heavily armored than Vextar. I am General Faxmer of the Federation Defense Corps. Your approach to shipbuilding is ... unusual. Most species develop separate civilian and military infrastructures. Most species, Rodriguez said carefully, may not have faced the kind of threat we encountered during the Great Silence. Tell me about these raiders, Faxmer said, his tone becoming more serious. Their capabilities, their tactics. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Dr. Chun, who pulled up a holographic display from her portable device. The display showed reconstructed images of the attacks, based on sensor data and survivor testimonies. They used advanced cloaking technology, Rodriguez explained. Energy weapons we couldn't identify. Their ships were fast, maneuverable, and seemed designed specifically for hit-and-run attacks against civilian targets. Civilian targets specifically? Faxmer asked. Yes, they avoided our military installations and focused on colonies, research stations, and transport vessels. Almost as if they wanted to cause maximum psychological damage. General Faxmer was quiet for a long moment, his compound eyes studying the holographic displays. Finally, he spoke, and his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Chun, what you've described sounds remarkably similar to attacks we've been investigating for the past several decades. Raids on the outer territories of Federation space, targeting civilian populations of member species. A chill ran through the chamber. Ambassador Kethvol's skin shifted to a deep purple color. General, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that humanity may have encountered the same hostile force that has been plaguing our borders for years, Faxmer replied. A force we've been unable to identify or counter effectively. Rodriguez felt the dynamics in the room shift dramatically. Suddenly, the humans weren't primitive newcomers begging for acceptance. They were veterans of a conflict that had touched the entire galaxy. How did you eventually stop the attacks? Asked KETH single quotes Val. Dr. Chun answered this time. We didn't stop them. They stopped attacking us. Why? Rodriguez smiled grimly. Because after 2 years of losses, we changed our response doctrine. Every human vessel, regardless of its primary mission, was equipped for combat. Every colony was fortified. Every transport traveled in armed convoys. We made it clear that attacking human targets would be expensive. And it worked? Asked another representative. The attacks ceased 18 months later, Rodriguez confirmed. Whether because we became too costly to attack, or because the raiders moved on to easier targets, we don't know. But we learned that predators avoid prey that fights back effectively. General Faxmer stood from his position. Captain, I would like to request a formal briefing on your defensive technologies and tactics. If you found effective countermeasures against these raiders, the Federation needs to learn from your experience. The implications were staggering. The humans had arrived expecting to be judged as primitives, only to discover they possessed knowledge and capabilities that the advanced Galactic Federation desperately needed. High Counselor Vextar's antennae twitched rapidly as he processed this new information. This changes the nature of our discussions considerably. Captain Rodriguez, humanity was invited here as a candidate for membership in the Galactic Federation. Junior membership with limited privileges and a probationary period. Rodriguez waited, sensing that the conversation was about to take another dramatic turn. Asterisk. However, Vextar continued, it appears that humanity possesses strategic knowledge and defensive capabilities that could benefit all member species. The Federation Council will need to reconsider our standard integration protocols. Ambassador Kethvol's chromatophores shifted to what Dr. Chun recognized as patterns of excitement and anticipation. Captain, would humanity be interested in a different kind of arrangement? not as junior members, but as full partners in addressing the threat that has plagued both our peoples? Rodriguez looked at her diplomatic team, seeing the same mixture of surprise and opportunity in their faces. They had come expecting to negotiate for basic recognition. Instead, they were being offered partnership based on their hard-won knowledge of survival. "Ambassador," Rodriguez said carefully, "humanity is always interested in cooperation against threats to innocent people. But we would need to understand what kind of partnership you're proposing." "Full membership," Vexstar declared, "with an immediate seat on the Defense Council. In exchange, humanity would share its defensive technologies and tactical knowledge with all Federation members." Dr. Chun stepped closer to Rodriguez and whispered, "Captain, this is unprecedented. They're offering us equal status, not the subordinate position we expected." Rodriguez nodded, then addressed the assembly. "High Counselor, Ambassador, General, I appreciate this offer. But I need to make something clear. Humanity didn't develop our defensive capabilities because we love conflict. We developed them because we love peace enough to fight for it." "Explain," said Kethval. "We arm our ships not to threaten others, but to protect what matters to us. Our families, our colonies, our way of life. The Thunderstrike carries weapons, yes, but her primary mission is to explore, to learn, to build bridges between different peoples. The weapons are there so she can complete that mission safely." Rodriguez paused, looking around the great amphitheater at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. "If humanity joins this federation, we will bring our strength to bear against any threat to innocent people, regardless of their species. But we will never compromise our core principle. Every human vessel, every human outpost, every human citizen has the right and capability to defend themselves." General Faxma's mandibles clicked in what Rodriguez was beginning to recognize as approval. "Captain, I believe the Federation has much to learn from humanity's approach to survival, and we have much to learn from your knowledge and experience," Rodriguez replied. "Perhaps together we can build a galaxy where threats like the Great Silence become impossible." As the formal session concluded, Rodriguez realized that humanity's first contact had been nothing like what anyone had expected. The Galactic Federation had invited what they thought was a primitive species seeking protection. Instead, they had encountered a people forged by conflict into something unprecedented, shepherds who could protect the flock from wolves that prowled between the stars. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would help lead that change. Not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as partners bringing their hard-won wisdom to the greater community of worlds. The Thunderstrike would return to Earth, carrying not just news of first contact, but an invitation to help shape the future of galactic civilization. And in the depths of space, ancient threats would soon discover that the galaxy had gained a new kind of protector, one that had learned its lessons in blood and would never forget them. Asterisk